So what's one thing that most turbochargers need? Oil, and that's what we're doing today. We're putting oil to that turbocharger. Okay, so we are going to do things a little bit different to how we normally do it. This is me taking maybe a little bit of a risk doing it this way, so if you're really interested to see what you guys think of my idea. But normally what you would do is you would find your oil pressure sensor and you would run from that area to the turbo. It's usually what people do, or they put a sandwich plate in. We are not going to do that. As you see, I've taken off this, and what I plan to do is this engine has a factory oil cooler, and I'm going to tee into that. So we've got the oil cooler here, and I've gone to the wreckers and I've actually chopped out the same section, and I'm going to make a little fitting out of this. And then I'm going to weld in a nipple, and then we're going to use a little flexi pipe to go into the top of the turbo. So literally that is the full length of the oil feed. And I reckon it's going to look a lot cleaner. But, like I said, I've never done it this way before, so this is a little experiment, and if it all goes to crap, well, hey, at least I was honest about it. So, I guess we'll start cleaning up some stuff and start welding and see how this all goes. Let's get to it. So the normal place we need to start is cleaning the piece of metal, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking over to the wire wheel and we're going to clean all the dirt off it and get that ready for the bandsaw. The bandsaw, we're just going to like cut the ends off to get ready for the lathe. As you can see here, we don't need this little piece of crap, so I'm chucking that away, and then we're smashing into the lathe. So the reason I'm using the lathe is I want it all smooth, so when I weld together, there's going to be no little bits of section that the oil can actually get into. I want them to bed nicely, so when I weld them up, it is one piece. So now that I've got these 4 pieces ready and looking good, ready for welding, I'm going to get a drill bit and we're going to put that in the middle so we can get these things all lined up. We're going to feed both sides, and then I'm going to lay a bead all the way around to get it ready for this T section. So I'm using an AN nipple, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to grind a little bit out of it so it sits nicely on this bit I've just made. And once I get that ready, I'm going to drill that out, weld that in, and there you go. We've got a perfectly good oil adapter to go to the turbo. Okay, so what we need to do now is you can see that I'm clear coating this thing up. I've already polished it, already gone over it with some thinners to make sure it's nice and clean. So we're going to clear coat it so nothing rusts. Next thing we need to do is we need to figure out what is the in and out for this oil cooler. So the only way to do that is to turn the engine over without the ignition connected and see where the oil starts coming out from. Pretty simple stuff, so let's get to it. Alright, so I've got the ignition disconnected, and we're just going to turn the engine over and hopefully build up some oil pressure and see where the oil is actually coming from. So what I ended up doing was putting the T-piece on the feed side to the oil cooler. It's going to have a bit more pressure, so I'm happy to put it from here. And look, if there ends up being enough pressure, we can put it on the opposite side and actually put in a little bit cooler oil into the turbo. But at the moment, I think this is the best way of going about it. Now we've got this piece made and Josh has done the sump, we need to get this to the sump. So what we're going to need is some tape and a pen, and we're just going to bolt it up, cut, direct it, change directions, cut, chop, you know, just do all that to get it to line up. And try and keep it as far away from the exhaust as possible. We're going to see how we go. We've got the alternator right in the way, so this is going to be fun. And fun it was. But before I start, I just want to say to you guys that I did find this product for sale on eBay, and I think, look, if you don't have the equipment to actually make this part I'm about to make, this will definitely be awesome and will do the job. So there's always a way around things, guys. You don't have to do it exactly how I'm doing it if it's your own project. And if you think about the time that I actually put into making this stuff, this is definitely the way to go. Now that I've got the beginning tube done,
what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the housing off the front of the turbo just to allow me a little bit more room to get these screws in and to start to chop and cut and get the actual angles I need to get this oil return done. So pretty much this is a bit of a trial and error sort of thing. You just gotta play it by ear and see if you can actually get there. I'm trying to fit it between the alternator and the manifold, so quite hard, but with a bit of patience you can do it. You just gotta take your time. So after a good strength test to make sure this thing's not going to break out on the forward drive track, Josh is ready to drill out the sump. So Josh is drilling out the sump, and as you can see, we're drilling at a height where the oil is roughly going to be below. You don't want to do this inside the oil, you don't want to do it too high above the oil. You really want to be as close to the oil level as possible. Now that said, let's hear what Josh has to say.
So here we have a 3/4 BSP tap, and we're going to run it through this hole in the sump with the rattle gun. The reason for that is it gives it a nicer thread because you can apply pressure and it can go through at the same time.
So after Josh was done, this is what he did to my laundry. He put oil and grease absolutely everywhere, but the end product looks amazing. So, well done Josh. Very happy with how that turned out. Used maybe a little bit too much silicone, but it's a good job nonetheless. So now that's done, it's on to the rest.
Well, it's a new day. After that, I actually got COVID. So it's a week later and you can't make this stuff up. What are you going to do? I can barely hear. If I sound a bit off, I can't hear myself speak. So what are you going to do? Anyway, so now that's done. We don't have time to rest. We're going to keep going for it. So let's start doing that crossover pipe.
So because this is a V6, we need to do a crossover pipe, and we haven't tackled that yet because I was worried about things being in the way. But now that we've got 90% of the job done, it's time to do it. So I started off trying to hard weld this and then quickly realized if I kept going with what I was doing, I wasn't going to be able to get the manifold off. So I decided to weld a flange on and make this a 3-piecer. So we're using a V-clamp, and the reason why I like to use these is because once they're done up, you know they're done up. It's not a guessing game. You don't have to rely on a gasket to get it to seal. They just work really, really good. There is a little trick I like to do, and when I get the two pipes together, I like to make one come out through the flange a little bit and then have the other one inserted a little bit, and what that does is just creates a better seal. And I've found this works really, really well. And it also helps me actually doing up the flange. Now that we got that first section mounted up, what I need to do is jack this car up, get underneath the car, and then try and figure out how to go from point A to B to the factory exhaust on the Pajero. And to do that, I need to get the old exhaust that we took off originally, and I need to chop the end off so we have a point of connection. So that's what I'm doing. I'm chopping it off. I'm going to stick it in the lathe, get it all nice and straight, and I'm going to weld it onto a bend, and then we're going to try and join these two places together.
Well, this thing is definitely not pretty, but it will do the job. And the best thing about this is once it's done, if there is any corners I can take out, maybe I can cut this here and cut that there and join that straight up. If there's any little things I can do, I'll be able to do it afterwards. But for now, we're going to weld this all up, put it in the car and try to finish off this last little bit. Let's get to it.
So after checking over everything, I know that we have to get around that starter motor to make this 100% perfect. So that's what we're doing. We're back on the blade saw. We're chopping that last little bit off. We're going to grind it up, make it look pretty, and we're going to then test it again to make sure that we are in the right area. And that means me getting back on my back, getting back underneath this car, and then checking out, because the next bit that we're going to do is super important. And that is a flexi pipe. So when metal heats up, it expands, it moves all over the place, and we need some flexibility in this manifold design, and that's what I'm going to do right here, is use this flexi joint. Now this is really important. You don't want to use a flexi point that has braided stainless steel inside it or any type of mesh, because what happens is that heat can melt it and all that mesh can go through your turbo. So if it's before the turbo, you definitely want to use one of these. They're fantastic, but they are one way. So you got to put them in the way the exhaust is flowing. And as you can see, that's what I'm doing right here. And then once I'm happy, I'll weld that in, chuck it all back into that car again, get back underneath there, and let's see how it's all turned out.
Wait, I know what you're thinking. Why do I have this in my hand and why didn't I weld it underneath the car? Well, that's because we had something very important to do, and that was get this manifold skimmed. So we welded this and we got it pretty good. We hand sanded it, but you're never going to get it quite perfect. So we decided to get it skimmed, and the reason why I didn't weld that last little section is because when you get things skimmed, it's going to change the angle a little bit. So if I welded that last spot before I did this, it wouldn't be perfect after I've done this. So we're gonna whack everything on, we're gonna do it all properly, new gaskets, make it all look pretty. This is going on for the last time, and then we'll finish off by welding this up. Let's get to it.
Did I say new gaskets? Well, that was the plan, but the gaskets that I have are for a 6G75, which unfortunately is not going to work in this case. We are using some copper spray, and that is going to give us just that extra bit of guarantee that these gaskets are truly sealed and none of that exhaust gas is going to be coming out.
Well, I've taken this back out after chucking in that crossover pipe, and pretty much that is all that is left to do. So we're going to weld this on. I'll weld the whole thing on. We're going to hop back underneath the car, and then we're going to weld underneath the car to get this 100% perfect. So first up, let's get this done. Whew.
So I'm going to take this moment to say to anyone who can actually use one of these TIGs that you have to start the arc, and it's not a push button, you have to turn on the gas, get them to work. You guys are absolute legends, and mate, I bow down to you. It is so hard to get a nice looking weld when you have to start the arc and you have to control the gas with your fingers. Yeah, definitely pays off to have a good machine working. And unfortunately mine broke, so I'm using this $100 TIG, and it's getting the job done. So at least that's something. But I just want to say to the guys who can actually get something really nice out of such a terrible product, good on you guys. Fantastic, and definitely very skilled. So once that's all done, back underneath the car, getting it all lined up, and now I have to pull all the tricks out of the bag to try and get this perfect. This is gonna suck so hard. Hi, Dan.
Hello.
I think he was worried about me.
He is worried. He's come back heaps of times to check to see if you scratched yourself.
Well, I don't blame him. This is not a very comfortable position to be welding.
Go on, come inside. It's cold, buddy. You never have to get up. No, you can come back here tomorrow before the end of the day.
That was a fluke. Thank you for worrying about me, Logan. Yeah. So what I've done is I have done 3 different beads to make sure that's not going to move, so I can take it out underneath the car and actually weld it on the bench, which means it's going to be a way better weld because there's no way you could get a good weld underneath that car. So here we go, we're going to weld this up and hopefully it looks all good. You guys be the judge.
And look at that, the cross pipe is done, but it's one thing I want to do, and that's put some ceramic coating on it. This won't fit in the oven, so it's not going to cure like it would normally. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to heat it up and then spray it. It's not recommended, but it's the best thing I could do in this situation. So got my trusty blowtorch here, got my rail can. Let's get to it.
Here's a little hint for you guys. If the pipe starts to cool down and it's not curing properly, don't use a blowtorch, use a heat gun instead. That's what I did because I didn't want to catch my shed on fire, and I think you guys will agree that is a good thing every day of the week.
Well, there you go. This is officially now a V6 turbo. So pretty happy with that. We've got that in. It's looking good. We've got it all ceramic coated. It is nice and tight. I'm really happy with how that turned out because when you're doing it on the floor, that is a big effort. So next thing we're going to do is the dump pipe and the screamer. We're going to do a normal dump pipe and then we're going to do a dump pipe like this. Just for shows and stuff. And as you can see there, we've got the velocity stack. That doesn't actually fit at the moment, but we're going to make it work. So, more exciting things to come. Hope I see you on the next one. If you like what you're watching, please subscribe. Catch you guys.